Well, that's a wake up elevator music this morning. Well, good morning, all. Happy Wednesday. So glad that you all are with us today. I'm very excited about today. So we had a lot of interest in what we're going to talk about, and a lot of people have jumped in on registering for this event, having difficult discussions with your team members. And don't we all have that? It doesn't matter if you're in a small group like we are here at the partnership, or a large group, or even with your friends. You know, we don't always see the same viewpoints. And so I think Colber and Vandy will enlighten us today, and we'll all be able to take some nuggets to put to use immediately. So let me tell you this. So Vandy and I go way back. Leadership Blount, 2003, best class ever. Yeah. You knew that I had to say that, but I've known Vandy for a very long time. I remember Vandy, I think we were at Heritage at one point.
Yep.
And then of course I knew you
Go
there.
Mountaineers.
Yes, I'm a mountaineer now.
I know you are.
and at Maryville College, and now you're on the school board. Is that right?
I am.
How's that working for you?
An interesting way to sort of wrap up my long career.
I think that's awesome, though. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So glad that you're with us today. And then, folks, I met Colber, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago, and this guy lit me up. And what I mean by that, your personality was just so, and you're going to see it today. It was just so large, and we just clicked immediately. Do you remember that?
Yeah, you started talking about shoes, and that was it.
Yes.
I love shoes too.
I'm excited that you're all going to hear from them today. So a couple of things before I tell you a little bit more about them is we're going to mute all today. So make sure you're on mute. If you have questions throughout today, this morning, you can type those in chat. There will be opportunities, though, where Vandy and Colber open it up for questions. So stay tuned for that. And then we'll have an exit survey, I think, throughout. Vandy's going to handle that, so I'm not going to get into that. But let me tell you a little bit about these two fine folks. Vandy, 39 years of experience in education, serving at the high school and college levels. Since her retirement as vice president and dean of students at MC, Maryville College, she has worked with various educational and nonprofit agencies. She focuses on strategic planning as well as leadership development. And she is the other, I don't know how to say this, the other half of Prosper and Partners. Would that be right? Am I saying that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And good. And Colber, am I saying that right? Colber?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Has over 20 years of experience in community building and advocacy. He spends most of his time assisting communities and organizations reaching their goals. Hey, my phone's ringing. My desk phone's ringing, so I apologize. He works strategic planning, leadership, group dynamics. Let me say that one again. Group dynamics and workplace equity. In 2011, he founded Prosper and Partners, a transformation team of do-gooders. I love that you put in there that do-gooders that assist professionals, organizations, and communities around the world to work together. He is a graduate of Maryville College, and you do call East Tennessee your home. Is that correct?
That is correct, ma'am.
Well, welcome. Thank you both. And I'm going to turn it over to you all.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Tammy and I met a few months ago, became fast friends. Next time I'm in Tennessee, we will be going shopping because we both love shoes. And so just really thankful for this opportunity. And Vandy and I are excited about this work. We borderline obsessed about helping people work better together, and we're going to do that here. So Vandy, let's get started. And I do want to say that the PowerPoint is in the chat box, and I'll upload it again. The PowerPoint is in the chat box.
This is that awkward time when we wait for him to share the PowerPoint. This is when we need music.
Are you sharing the slides? Because I know you want to.
No, but I can.
I know you like controls of the slides. So.
Oh, be quiet.
And so as Vandy puts up the slides, I want you all to be thinking about what conversations, when we think about difficult conversation, what do those conversations feel like? What do those conversations look like for you? What are some of those conversations where it turned out well, and also those conversations that didn't turn out so well? And also thinking about what would you want from this experience? Because we definitely want you all to be thinking about and working together and discussing how do we use critical reflection in a way to enhance our skills around having difficult conversations. And so we're going to start with an icebreaker.
So this icebreaker is going to be a video that you will recognize the characters of, and it takes about 2 minutes, and we just want you to take a look at it. And the question is, where did this all go wrong? And instead of doing a report out, just jot down some of your thoughts in the chat so you can share them with everybody.
Let me know if you all see that. Hold on.
There we go.
Let me do that again.
And there we didn't.
I have to share the sound. Here we go. Let me know if you hear it.
She broke up with you.
No, but I can tell she's going to. I can sense it. We had this terrible phone conversation. I was so nervous before I called. I made up this whole list of things to talk about.
Who's on the list?
Let's see. How I'm very good at going in reverse in my car. Why isn't Postum a more popular drink?
Yeah, Postum is underrated.
Anyway, there was all this tension. I asked her if she wanted to go out to dinner, and she said no, maybe we could get together for lunch. You know what that means?
What's wrong with lunch?
Lunch is fine at the beginning. Then you move on to dinner. You don't go back to lunch. It's like being demoted. I'll never do another crossword puzzle with her again. I know it.
I like the jumble. You ever do the jumble?
I have no power. Don't you understand? I need hand. I have no hand.
You break up with her.
What?
You break up with her. You reverse everything that way. A preemptive breakup.
A preemptive breakup. This is an incredible idea.
Yeah.
I got nothing to lose. We either break up, which she would do anyway, but at least I go out with some dignity, or I completely turn the tables. This is absolutely brilliant. So I'm afraid that I am gonna have to break up with you.
You're breaking up with me?
Shocked?
I really am.
Never expected this, did you?
I thought everything was fine.
Well, live and learn.
understand. You didn't enjoy being with me? Didn't we have fun doing the crossword puzzle?
Kind of.
I'm very confused.
Well, I didn't mean to hurt you, kid.
I thought that...
Now stop it, please.
So where did this conversation go wrong? Please share your thoughts in the chat box.
Okay, so Colbert, we've got not being authentic, avoiding the issue, bad advice, and unsolicited. Assumptions, Kramer, awkward conversation all on his own. Men seeking advice from men.
It's so true.
Yeah. Starting from a place of high emotions. There you go. You've already done our workshop. Undefined issue. I've heard it called future tripping, where you spin something out of control. Desire for control versus desire for true, honest communication. That's good.
And we have conflict avoidance.
Yep.
Vandy, I think that's our presentation there.
I think it is. These people do not need us. So. All right.
So before we get into this conversation about having difficult conversation, we want to set some expectations for this space in this room as we all create meeting around this topic. We ask that you all be present and in the moment, and I know that's very difficult when we have other responsibilities, phones ringing in the background, text messages, or even missing coffee or breakfast, right? So doing our best to be present and in the moment. We also ask that you all use I statements. So as you all discuss and you all will be given the opportunity to discuss with others, be sure to use I statements in sharing your thoughts. And be honest in sharing your thoughts and your emotions and thinking about what those are. Be cognizant of what you're thinking. Be cognizant of your emotions. Vandy will share taking a temperature check. Listen, respect each other without judgment. There's almost 50 people on this call, and so people are coming from different places, different backgrounds, and so being progressive in our hearing and in a sense of willing to hear the different perspectives that people are coming from. Also, this place is a space for confidentiality, so we don't want to start any Blount County drama what is shared in this space. And so we just want you all to be thinking about these expectations as we dialogue with each other. Also, Vandy and I know very much that this is a space that in order for the literature is clear that in order to have these conversations in a constructive and civil way, you have to practice having these conversations and you have to have conversations about these conversations. And so we are taking a risk by opening this up for you all to speak to each other. And so please be appropriate, please be professional. If that's not taking in this space, we'll make sure you are removed. And if it increases, we'll stop the whole session. So just wanted you all to be cognizant of that. Vandy?
Okay, today we're going to cover several things. It's a packed hour and 20 minutes or so. So we wanted to let you know before we go in what you're in for. So we're going to talk about examples of difficult conversations and how they evolve. We're going to talk about how you can normalize difficult conversations within your workplace so that they're not maybe quite so frightening. Colbert's going to talk about power structure in an office environment and how that shapes people having difficult conversations with each other, and how motivation and someone mentioned in the chat box, feelings, emotion, ramp up or change the character of these conversations. We're also going to mention that sometimes you just need to let it go, and when is that? And then our big deal in difficult conversations is that we want you to think hard about what you want the relationship to be at the end of the conversation. So before we get going, there are a few things I want to go over, just a basic understanding. And I've put some resources there. These are popular publications, of course, nonfiction publications that hopefully some of you have already read. That if you want to continue learning about this, they're good resources for you. So, what is a difficult conversation? Well, duh, any conversation that raises bad feelings. So a difficult conversation can happen with your 15-year-old. There are a lot of difficult conversations with 15-year-olds, or your partner, or your spouse, or a subordinate at work, or your boss, your doctor. Difficult conversations happen every day all around us. Can we teach you how to make them fun? No, but we can help you navigate them. So why are difficult conversations so fraught with anxiety and dread? Well, they make us uncomfortable, and we will do almost anything to avoid uncomfortableness and awkwardness because we are polite Southern people and we don't like that feeling. But the main reason is that when you're in a conversation with somebody, your control is limited. And that's another thing that just makes us feel uncomfortable. We're also polite and we don't want to hurt anybody and we don't want to be hurt. And difficult conversations, as we've said now 3 times in the last 10 minutes, are characterized by strong feelings and strong emotions. So why do you bother? And this is something to keep in mind from the very beginning. There are huge benefits to learning how to have difficult conversations. For one thing, they acknowledge where problems may exist within the organization. And if you are a boss or supervisor, those issues may be invisible to you. So they open up space to clarify those things. They also open up possibilities, ideas that maybe you haven't thought about. And frankly, hard conversations are absolutely required for strategic and difficult decision making. So there's 3 kinds of conversations that happen in the workplace that we want you to sort of have in the back of your mind. There are all kinds of things that people have difficult conversations about. But the ones that we find most common with our clients is, first of all, a response to something that has happened in the workplace that has made one or more of the workers uncomfortable, offensive. This has been a big topic of conversation in the last year or two about disrespect that's shown through inappropriate jokes or inappropriate actions within the workplace. How do you have a conversation about that? Also, conversations that have to do with behavior, even behavior outside the workplace that may be deemed unprofessional and affect the workplace. And of course, the most difficult conversation for most of us is when there's a corrective job action or, in fact, a termination. We are not going to tell you how to fire somebody and make them feel happy about it, but there are ways to approach that kind of job action in a way that we think is more respectful and can have actually positive outcomes. So Colber's going to send us to the break room. And the question is, with your little group that you're disappearing into the breakout room with, and I said break room, there's no food and beverages in there. But anyway, when you get to the breakout room, share with each other, we're going to give you about 5 minutes, share with each other a time when a difficult conversation ended really well.
So I'm going to put you all in groups of 3 to 4. And in those groups of 3 to 4, you all are going to discuss the prompt on the slide. Describe a time when a difficult conversation ended well. So I'm going to send those invitations to you all in 3, 2.
Goodbye.
So you all will be discussing, again, describe a time when those conversations went well. Everyone is coming back. Share your thoughts. What did you all discuss in your breakout groups? Feel free to share your thoughts in the chat box. What did you all discuss in your breakout groups? And you think we're all back here? Anyone, feel free to share your thoughts on what you all shared in your breakout groups. If we have a brave individual, they can unmute their mics.
I'll start.
All
Sorry,
right.
Colber.
Thank you, Miss Evity.
No problem. This is Evity. The biggest thing that I think the biggest takeaway from I was in our conversation, and when she shared, it made me realize that a lot of times when we're in jobs and positions, people, in my experience, I found that it's either if you're getting in trouble, or if you did something, then the automatic result would be that you're fired or you have to quit. To where, and it's important for us that are in leadership to make sure that there's space where the employer or an employee knows that it's not an option to quit or be fired. We're going to work through this problem together because we need you as an employee. And so really creating that space to where your employees are your clients or whoever don't feel like they're about to get fired because of a situation that they did. And then there are situations where somebody needs to be fired, but that's not the majority of the situation. So really creating an environment where employees feel like they can come to you without having the tension of being fired.
You must have been looking at my slides. Thank you for that response. You're right, creating an environment in which we can have those conversations. Thank you for sharing that, Evity. And so just a bit of who we are and what we do and why we do what we do, Vandy and I. So Vandy and I have been doing work around having difficult conversations, helping organizations, communities work better together, as well as doing implicit bias and anti-racist trainings across the country. And so our last training we did together was for the governor of Delaware and his staff around implicit bias. And where Vandy and I are today, I'd have to say that we are the quintessential poster children of difficult conversations. And what you all see today is a series of difficult conversations that her and I had. And so our story pretty much begins in when we really started getting to know each other, is through these series of difficult conversations. So I was several years ago, I was attending an institution in Blount County, a college, and it was my junior year, my third year. And I was the president of the Black Student Association, known as the Black Student Alliance. And Vandy was the vice president and dean of student at the time. And so the college we worked at, she worked at, and I attended is predominantly white. And the reason I say that is because that my white counterparts, my white peers often talked about how accepted and often talked about how included and validated they felt by the institution and by the campus community. And I wasn't feeling that. And I often felt like the unwanted foster kid, and also other students of color felt that way on the campus. Things really got bad my junior year when there were a series of bias incidents and anti-Semitic incidents. And what Vandy and I really came to a head when one of the students who was a part of Black Student Association, people were throwing bananas in front of his door. And we know that the age-old stereotype with bananas is the whole idea of people of color, Black people specifically, being seen as primates. And you can see this in eugenic science and the history of all of that. And so when that took place, we said we felt like the institution was not responding as they should. And so what we decided to do as Black Student Association, what we decided to do was boycott from going to class. And we sent this letter and communication to the administration, to faculty, and saying that we're not going to class because we felt like the institution was not addressing these issues and these incidents as they should. And so we boycotted, and it made everyone on campus found out, and it made local news. And so my position as Black of the Black Student Association was to represent my constituents, but also share my thoughts and feelings, our thoughts and feelings, to the administration. And so as this turbulent time is happening, and one day I was in the Multicultural Center airing my frustrations. We were frustrated. We felt scared because we were putting ourselves out there, and so we felt in some danger, and physically. We also felt like it wasn't unfair, and we felt deeply hurt at the time. And I was airing my thoughts and my emotions. And at the time, the diversity coordinator was a Black woman and said, "Come here." And so when she said she could come, so I came, and she took me to Vandy's office and sat me down and said to Vandy and I, "You all need to talk." And just to tell you, like, one, I didn't trust Vandy. I didn't trust the administration. And I halfway didn't like Vandy at the time. So we were placed in a situation where we both didn't want to be. Vandy?
Yeah, I'll take it from there. This was Maryville College, folks. We had been splashed all over the news. I and every other administrator there wanted this to go away. And when Paula brought him in my office and went out and sort of slammed the door, "You two need to talk," we just sat there. And here was what I was feeling, because we want you to think about how you're feeling when you go into these difficult conversations. This may surprise you, but I was afraid, because this young man had the power to blow up, figuratively, my happy little Maryville College campus. They were staying out of classes. They were skipping practices. This was an angry, hurt bunch of young people. And I did. He's probably at that point the last person in the world I wanted to talk to. "How are you feeling?" "Well, you've already said, Colber, you didn't like me and you didn't trust me." I just wanted him to disappear. So after staring at the floor for several minutes, he says I spoke first. I'm not really sure, but we finally looked at each other and just started to talk and started to share the fact of how uncomfortable we were, that we both represented other constituencies that we felt that we needed to represent accurately, and what on earth could we do to work together and make this happen. So we were emotional, we were upset, but we immediately started fishing around for some kind of common ground. So
And
yeah, go ahead.
no, I think you say this part better. Go ahead.
Well, we moved from there to speaking regularly. I mean, this took quite a while. I discovered things about students of color living on campus that I'd never thought about before. I never thought about what it was like to be the only student in a white class with a white professor, and what that might feel like depending on the topics you're talking about. We started sharing back and forth. I told him what it meant for me to try to maintain order and make everybody feel safe and comfortable on campus. And through the weeks, we came up with all kinds of strategies of how we might give better legitimate voice to our students of color, and also teach other people about what this experience means. And so between the two of us, we invented something called the Black Student Leadership Conference, which actually still goes on at Maryville College. We helped them celebrate its 10th anniversary a couple of years ago. But it was an opportunity for Black students from up and down the Carolinas, Kentucky, and Tennessee to come together one weekend of a year and just talk about the issues they have on the campus and learn how to work within that environment. So, and then after I retired from Maryville College, he hired me and he's my boss now. So it's a good outcome to a difficult conversation.
And I think a point that I think I really want to share is that it wasn't until a year later, Vandy and I were sitting we're having lunch together, and she had her hands in her hair, and she's like, what do you want from me? And at the time, and I was halfway kidding, but I was sort of serious. I said I want a bus load of Black and brown people to come on campus so people can see us, people can recognize us. And I think what, prior to that or right after that,
Right
we went
after
to a
that, yeah.
conference. Yeah, she went to a conference and then saw different models of leadership and conferences for students of color. And so because of those continuous conversations, we're able to create the Glimpse Conference that serves liberal art institutions in the region. And but I think I knew that I knew that I didn't like her, I didn't trust her, but I also knew that I needed her for us to change the environment on campus. And so that's why I kept showing up for the conversation. And in that, we're able to create some strategies and solutions which the institution is still using today. And so, so using that and thinking about that, we know that there are roles and power in the workplace. We know there's the supervisor and in my book, No Entry, Examining the Powers That Undermine Our Full Potential, I really talk about power, and I talk about how power is used to potentially stifle or grow people's potential. And from a supervisor level, you're given institutional power. And with that power, and power from the basic definition, is the capacity to get what you want. And so from a supervisor, we all know that the supervisor has more power than the team member. And as Evity has talked about, how can a supervisor create an atmosphere where their power is disaggregated in a way where team members feel like they can have those conversations with their supervisor? In my role, Vandy and I's role, Vandy always calls me to the carpet when there's needs to be something to happen, and it's because we have an environment where we can both be authentic and share our thoughts. Team member to team member, we know that the way work is being done nowadays is very much around teams and groups. And so when we have sort of the same power, then we have to really think about how do we influence each other when we want to get something done, and or how do we address each other when we have a challenge that arises, because these relationships have to continue. So thinking about our power, but also thinking about the power that our own identities bring when we begin to have these conversations. And also team member to supervisor, and Miss Everty just shared, how can we have our team members put in a position, because they have less power than the supervisor, to be able to have these conversations and share what's happening on the in a front line and whatever their work they're doing. So roles and power is very important for these conversations, and our job is to, again, create an environment where these conversations can happen and people continue to be civil and constructive.
So a couple of things before we get into the guts of a difficult conversation we want to talk about is motivation and emotion. And I like putting this piece in this particular presentation, because I think when it comes right down to it, what we want is for people to do what we want them to do. And we tend to organize our workplace, our lives, into a zero-sum winner-loser thing. And so there's some things that you have to remind yourself of about motivation. Folks, you can't force even your 15-year-old, particularly your 15-year-old, to do what you want, because other people are going to do things for their reasons, not yours. And so, as Colber just said, the best we can do is to create a culture or an environment where we can increase people's willingness to work together to do what the organization needs to have done. But forcing autocratic team leaders doesn't work anymore, if it ever did. And the other thing that I think is important to think about in terms of motivation and difficult conversations is when you sense hostility in someone, in my experience as a principal and a dean and being in agencies and working as a consultant, when people appear angry or frustrated, they're almost always afraid of something. And if you can back up and say, what are you afraid of? It can often uncover something that is valuable.
And so I think the common thought is that our rational minds and or our logic uh, precedes our emotions, which isn't the case at all. Our emotions are the dominant driver in our decision making, meaningful decision making, and what we do. And so it's very important when we think about these conversations is to think about our emotions. What are we feeling? Where is it coming from? What is the apprehension? What is the anxiety? And so as you go through these conversations, and Vandy's going to really talk through before and during and after, really thinking about our emotions and where are they coming from. And I would encourage you to share what your emotions and where they're coming from before, during, and after these conversations.
Okay, so what I'm going to do for the next few minutes is take you into the guts of a difficult conversation and talk about some of the things to be thinking about. Many of you are already experts at this. And so you'll see, I hope, that a lot of what I say and talk about and show you reinforces what you already know to be true. That you'll have a time to react in a group later on and sort of think through some of this. But I just want to say we are going to post this PowerPoint. So you'll be able to go back and look at this. So we believe that throughout the whole process, the most important thing for you to do is keep asking yourself questions, keep thinking, asking questions. So before, during, and after a conversation, there are key questions. So what has happened and why does it matter to me? For example, if you're a boss and someone has complained that someone has talked inappropriately or is making this person feel uncomfortable and they report it to you, what does that have to do with you? Is this something you need to be attending to? Or let's say it's the kind of team member to team member conversation where you believe that the new employee over here is not dressing appropriately for the workplace and you want to see something done about it. Does that matter to you? Is that a difficult conversation you ought to take on? Or is it something you just need to back off from? And I'm not telling you what to do there, but I want you to analyze before you go into a difficult conversation. Is it one that you need to be in on? Or is there a better way to handle it? How are you feeling? What's winding you up? And for us, the key question is, and where do you want whatever conversation we're going to have here in? What do you want your relationship to be like at the end? And I put on there when, where, no ambushing. When you are the person who's convening the conversation, you need to think about, when am I going to do this? When is it going to be most beneficial for our conversation to do it? I want to caution you about having difficult conversations at 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon. Kind of cowardly and often doesn't end well. But yeah, nobody should be particularly taken by surprise on these. And so letting somebody know, I'd like to talk to you. Can we get together? Where can we get together? Are decisions you need to make beforehand. So here's some essential skills to think of as you're going into a difficult conversation. I statements. Everybody knows that. These are common sense things. You don't shake your finger at somebody by saying you do this and you did that and you. It is, here's how I see it. Paraphrasing is really important for 2 reasons. One is when you paraphrase what somebody has said to you carefully, it means that you're having to listen, which interestingly enough is the thing that we forget most when we're having a difficult conversation. We forget to listen because we're too excited about what we're going to come back with that we're already composing our response. So listening and paraphrasing, I hear what you're saying. Asking questions, trying to probe out what is it that matters to the other person in that particular situation. And the next one I really love, and it is practice articulating vulnerability. Research in the last 10, 20 years has suggested over and over again that bosses, administrators, team leaders who are willing to be open, honest, and not try to be the smartest person in the room are powerful leaders. People tend to trust them and listen to them. And so if you're the convener of a conversation, sharing, here's what I think, here's what I'm feeling, can be very powerful. And then, of course, you all know, avoid gotcha questions. And when you're in that sort of conflict in one of these conversations, what you want to do is wag your finger and say, I knew you'd say that. I knew that's what you. Keep it to I. Don't play gotcha. So during the conversation, the questions shift to you as the convener or you as the respondent. Why are we here? What matters to each of us? What do we want our relationship to be at the end? And is there any common ground? And I want you to think about, because I know a lot of people on this call have been in supervisory situations and had to terminate folks or do job correction. Think about what it means in that kind of conversation to try to probe and see if there's any common ground. So this can be a model, a shaping of what a conversation might look at. So you've got the convener's perspective, you've got the respondent's perspective. The convener states why they have called this together, what they believe to be the truth. During that, the respondent is going to feel how? Probably going to feel defensive. But that means that the respondent may be thinking about what they're going to come back with. Instead, listen with full attention, jot down some things. Take a deep breath, check your emotions, listen instead of thinking about your response. Number 3, the convener asks questions. What do you think about my perspective? Am I accurate here? Tell me what you think. And the respondent reflects, paraphrases. This is what I hear you saying. Usually when somebody has said, even if it's that team member saying, I don't think you're addressing appropriately for our workplace, you need to state what you want out of this conversation. And I'm talking to you about this because this is what I suggest, or this is what I want to have happen. But you've got to sort of put that expectation there as the convener and then invite a response back. And at this point, the respondent may be feeling really emotional and defensive and hurt. And who the heck do you think you are? And that's when you really have to take a deep breath, listen and think. Is there any part of what has been said that you can agree with? And then you carefully respond. And the back and forth happens like that. Listening, checking emotions, reframing, responding, paraphrasing, back and forth. The conversation can be 10 minutes or it can be 2 hours. But at the end, the two of you together need to think about what the next steps are and ask for agreement. Now, let me talk briefly about a termination, a firing, that most unpleasant workplace difficult conversation. Number 1, Vandyism is nobody should ever be fired and be totally surprised and not have any idea that it's coming. Now, the exception to that is when an incident has occurred that is so grievous that it requires that kind of action. But when somebody is having difficulty, not meeting your expectations, not meeting their goals, those conversations, and I know a couple of the people in my breakout room earlier talked about, you do your paperwork, you do your homework, you have lots of conversations earlier so that when the termination comes, you already know each other well. You've been down this road for some time. There may even be some sense of trust there. And I'm not suggesting that anybody ever feels good being let go, but they should be able to have from you some understanding of why it's happening. The other piece of that is nobody likes doing a crappy job. Nobody feels good about being unsuccessful. And so sometimes helping somebody disengage and look toward the future can be the kindest thing you can do. So am I saying that firing is a real fun thing and everybody's going to feel good after it's over? Absolutely not. but developing the relationship early on within your organization with your team members and your team supervisors can help move. Because sometimes, folks, we just make bad hires, and we have to deal with that. Okay, after the conversation, is there some follow-up? Is it just over? Do we walk away? How am I feeling? I'm relieved, but did I do okay? And what is our relationship going to be going forward? So at the end of the conversation, there are also some essential skills to think about. And we put these under the umbrella of critical reflection. Being critical in thinking about how it went, how did you do? What did I learn as the convener or the respondent? What do I know that I didn't know before? Did I pay attention, or did I just lose it and get mad? What could I have done? Both parties, what could I have done to have made this conversation a little more effective? And then a follow-up, either person following up and saying, I've been thinking more about it, and I'd like to continue this. And there's some things you said that I've been thinking about, and I'd like to continue the conversation. Again, trying to maintain that workplace productive, respectful relationship after the conversation is over.
Vandy?
Yeah.
Could you go back?
Yep.
We have a question.
Okay.
How do you handle this difficult conversation if one of the parties isn't willing to do the active listening, clear communicating, and responding? Meaning, what if the one party doesn't have the communication skills?
Right.
I got stories for days.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Okay. Yeah. Does it really happen the way this nice slide goes? No, of course it doesn't. So what do you do when it's going awry? I believe that when somebody's getting too emotional in a conversation, you need to stop the conversation. And you need to say, look, we're both getting worked up and upset here, and this is difficult, but we need to talk about these things. So when would you like to get together again? You don't let them off the hook, but you also don't sit there and let them be abusive or so combative that you're just yelling at each other. And many times in my years as an administrator, I have said, let's take a break. And I think, again, it's the vulnerability of saying, yeah, I'm uncomfortable with this too. And I know this is a difficult conversation for both of us. So let's take a break. And when can we get together? You want to come back tomorrow morning, later this afternoon? What do you want to do? You disengage from the conflict, because when something starts to ramp up emotionally, there is no stopping it. So the only thing you can do is disengage.
We have a couple more questions.
Okay.
And so to that response, and I have, what if it's not high emotion, but it's intrusive? And then also, what if it's your direct report? And so I think when I think about these conversations, it's two things. It's what happened. So speaking to that specific event. And so thinking about how the specific event took place and what are the consequences of that event. And so then beginning to really think about, all right, we don't want this event to happen, or we don't want these consequences to happen. How do we work through that and make that happen? Also, the next point I'd like to think about is thinking about our emotions around that, and starting the conversations with our emotions, and going from that standpoint. If anybody have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat box, as well as feel free to unmute your mic.
And I'll add on the intrusive. I think I'm understanding that, and I don't know who asked that because I don't have my chat open. But if somebody is coming to you, if the convener of this discussion is intruding into something that you think is a private matter. So anyway, I'm going to address that. Anytime that you believe that you have been pulled into a difficult conversation that is nobody else's business is in fact a private matter, I think the response is, okay, I'm troubled that you're bringing this up in the workplace. Can you explain to me what this has to do with my work here? Now, sometimes, hopefully they can, like the dress code issue. Does it really matter what the new employee is wearing to work, especially if it's a cubicle job and nobody is seeing him or her? I don't know. But if you're convening it, you need to remember that slide way back there that said, why does this matter to me? You need to be able to explain why this matters to me in our organization. Otherwise, it may be something you need to back off from. Anything else?
Yes. What if the I've got two more.
Okay.
How do you handle these conversations with a direct report? And what if the person is an introvert? So from a personality standpoint, yeah, I've got a brother that way.
Yeah.
And I've messed up those conversations a lot. So what are your thoughts on that?
Direct report. So I'm guessing someone who is reporting to you, correct? Or direct report over you. The same, it all applies. It all applies. And that's why it is so important for administrators, bosses, supervisors within a work area, or even on a small team, to make sure that they are communicating a lot. Absolutely, communication is the most important skill in organizational dynamics and in leadership. And we do a whole other training on that. But the notion that direct reports have to have the kind of relationship that allows an environment for this kind of conversation. So it doesn't make any difference. Remember, Colber talked about the power. I think what you start is you think, okay, where is the power here? Because remember that in the conversation at Maryville College between student Colber Prosper and Dean Vandy Kemp, we had a huge power differential, sort of, but he had a lot of power. It was just a different kind of power from mine. So analyzing that in a direct report, difficult conversation will help you think about what is the power and how do we relate to each other, off or on the organizational chart. And the other thing was, Colber, about
introvert. So
introvert.
the introvert.
Okay, nobody ever believes. Yeah, nobody ever believes this, but I'm an introvert, and I know that those of you who know me are sitting there shaking your heads and saying, "No, she's not." Yes, she is. I'm going to hide under a pillow when this session is over. But here's what I know about introverts: we have to be prepared. We have to have notes. We have to have something that we can rely on, because if we don't, we panic and are nervous about putting ourselves out there, and we forget everything we want to say. It doesn't mean you get to run away from difficult conversations. It just means you probably need to put more thought into them and be more organized. Introverts also may actually be more emotional. And so it is an issue of self-awareness. If you know you're an introvert, you have to think about, how does that affect my ability to have a difficult conversation with either a peer or a supervisor or a subordinate?
So I got one more. So what if
Okay.
you're having issues with your boss?
Oh, well, that's a whole other training too, but I will tell you this briefly. It depends on what the issues are. And I mean, I can riff for 2 hours on this. Sometimes you need to find a new boss. I mean, that's the extreme thing. Colber and I did a training about a year ago, and 2 people quit their jobs as a result. I'm kind of worried about that. But you have to think about, can I be part of this organization if my objections to the leadership are so strong? Now, hopefully you're not in that kind of situation. And I think this model works. If it is bad enough that you feel like you need to express your opinions. And one thing that we haven't mentioned is a difficult conversation should not have as its goal, and you notice this hasn't been present, changing somebody's mind. It means that you're sharing information and you're sharing your 2 perspectives. But one of the outcomes may be agreeing to disagree. And sometimes having that conversation with your boss can be very important. You know, you've got all the calculus of, am I making a job risk by going to my boss? I encourage you to always cultivate a relationship with your supervisors, with your bosses. It's all about trust. And like I said, we do a whole thing on that. So if you want to pursue that more, we'd be glad to do that with you. But yes, there's nothing worse than working for the wrong boss.
Yeah, and I think also as well as when we think about the what are our goals as an organization and or our departments? What is our responsibilities, and also what are we trying to achieve? And so when I have these difficult conversations, especially from a workplace, I talk about that. So I talk about the fact that people are feeling this way, and because people are feeling this way, this is not happening. And so how do we rectify that not happening? People can get very defensive. People can feel like you're coming for them, throwing shade, all the above. So I like to talk about the actual incident or an event, or talk about the principles or the objectives in which we hold ourselves to. And so talking about that really begins to ask the question of, all right, how do we change these things for the betterment? Because we all have goals, we all have responsibilities. How do we make sure we reach those things? And posing things in a question format. That I think
Ask questions.
asking, I mean, and Vandy will tell you this, asking people questions to get them thinking about their behavior, and is I think is one of those skills that we can, that it doesn't get old.
So Colber and I have put together this great scenario for you to go off and practice. And I hope you're able to stick with us into this last 20 minutes or so. And he's going to post it in the chat, but I'm going to read it to you so that you can think about it while you're looking it up in the chat and pulling it up. You'll be back in a different breakout room, but there's some questions about how you would handle. And I think when we get into this scenario, you'll see all the multiple roles that people have and the power structure and all that in these kinds of workplace conflicts, and see how the things we've covered this morning can kind of approach this. So here goes. Lacey and Veer have been employed for 9 months at a regional sales office of an automobile company where they work in customer relations, managing government contract portfolios. For the past 4 months, Lacey and Veer's team have been working to secure one of the company's largest sales contracts ever to provide the fleet of cars and trucks for a city government with a population of 1 million. Around the time the company and the city government entered negotiations, Lacey and Veer befriended each other on a social media site. They soon discovered that they are total opposites on the political spectrum, something that just hadn't come up in the workplace. This knowledge brewed conflict between the two, so much so that their team member, Jose, picked up on the tension when it showed up during a negotiation meeting with the potential client. Their supervisor, Rin, also noticed something was off that day, but figured the team was just feeling anxious because of the size of this contract. The following weekend, Veer posted a particularly charged article that teetered on fake news, and Lacey angrily responded. As the flurry of posts commenced, Jose noticed the comments and was stunned by the abusive language. He worried about the potential fallout, but didn't know what to do or how to stop it. Later in the week, the city government withdrew from the contract negotiations with a letter stating disappointment and the comment, "We will not partner with a company whose members lack common skills for respectful civil political discourse." Rin was left completely confused. Jose was afraid that the company was referring to Lacey and Veer's social media war. And at that moment, Lacey and Veer both remembered that several of the city's negotiators followed their social media pages. So, Colber, have you got the link up?
Yes, so I have the scenario in the chat box. So So let me know. You just click that and you download what Vandy read.
And it should appear. And then we've got a series of questions, the typical questions. What's the main issue? What's each team member feeling? Who's in charge of this problem? Who needs to address it? What are the difficult conversations? Because there's lots that need to go on in this. And what should this team look like in the end?
Okay, I'll give everybody a moment to download that. All right. All right, I'm sending you all in your breakout rooms. Okay, somebody's not seeing it. Hold on. Let me post it one more time. And if someone, we'll be putting you all in groups. So if you don't have it, I'm sure someone else will. I posted it one more time. All right. All right, I'm putting you all in your breakout rooms in 3, 2, 1. You all be having 15 minutes.
Hey, Vandy, Colber, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So I forgot to mention earlier that there are continuing education credits that goes with today's session. So when you come back on or towards the end, will one of you just say, well, probably we need to do it now so that if they want us to send a certificate or whatever, email them a certificate, if they'll just put their name in the chat box and we'll make note of that and get that over to them.
I'll do that right when they come back.
And yeah, it's a couple of people keep asking me about slides and I got it. You've got it in the chat. And then someone asked about the recording. So after it's over today, we will send the recording to all that's on the session. And then we'll push it out otherwise. But somebody was asking me about that.
Okay, we'll do.
And that's it.
Gotcha. Got them written down.
No, good job.
Thank you.
All right.
I know that, but I told him I still want him to do it.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Does anyone want to share what you all discuss? Any brave soul want to unmute their mics and share their thoughts?
I was very
All right,
proud
I'll
of our
jump in.
team.
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Jump out.
Go ahead,
I was
Becky.
very proud of our team. I said we took had been a very difficult situation on a lot of levels for the past year. And if we'd had all of this in mind, it would have helped our sanity. But the main issue we believe is the appropriate use of social media and your representation. And so, you know, that there needs to be a social media policy and training around it, at the very least, best practice guidelines. And everybody should be expected to handle issues in person and with respect and not via social media. So kind of everything that we talked about went from there, and how a trained staff would necessarily not have these same issues, that they were speaking from passion and judgment and blame, and rather than getting together and doing it in person and learning about the other, they were making very easy judgments based on social media. So in the end, we thought the best thing that could happen is that the company would create a policy if they didn't have one in place, and respect each other in the workplace and root their relationship in a professional sense.
I think it was Hoppy, if I pronounced your name correctly.
Me?
Oh, no, that was the other person who wanted to jump in.
I'm Becky. Yeah.
Thank you, Becky. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Well, and I had some great input from Sarah and Michelle both too.
Go ahead. Who wanted to jump in and jumped out?
Anjanae Brulin here, and me and the people in our group, we this was an incredible example to see how if you don't have a difficult conversation on the individual level, it can escalate to where it affects and tears down many things to the point of affecting an organization. What is it? Love the question where it said, who should be having the conversations? Well, now that they've let it go to the point where the person in charge is the employer is going to probably start and have the power of of this situation. But some of the conversations were like, okay, so company admin and REN should be having a conversation about the policies and the onboarding that's taking place within the workplace or that branch or whatever it is. That REN needs to talk with Veer and Lacey. I thought this was really good. That, this did not come natural to me. So I want to appreciate I want to say thank you to one of my team members who said that Jose, Veer, and Lacey needed to have a conversation, because Jose was made to feel uncomfortable by their interactions and didn't feel like he had a space to do anything about it. And then, of course, Veer and Lacey needed to have a conversation about, should they even be friends on Facebook? Maybe that's not a platform they can share. So yeah, thanks. It was good.
Thank you for sharing.
Great.
Some
Go ahead.
quick housekeeping rules. Not rules, but thoughts. So you all can receive continuing education credits for attending this session. So please put your name and contact information in a chat box, and we'll send a certificate to you all. Again, you all will receive continuing education credits for taking this session. Please put your name and your contact information, and that certificate will be sent to you. Also, everyone who has joined The recording will be sent to you. Again, everyone who has joined, the recording will be sent to you. Vandy, you want to go back to the previous slide?
Yeah,
Just wanted to get those out to you.
just a few things wrapping up in these last minutes. My first bullet there, seriously, you really think this is all going to help? I want to emphasize, it's about the culture of your workplace. And I was so proud of the little group that I observed. You talked about this. And that is a top-down kind of thing. Organizational leaders create an environment where these things can work better. Difficult conversations are essential. They're always going to be uncomfortable. You don't escape that, but there are skills here that you can get, that you can develop and practice. And then the last bullet is another time for another training, but difficult conversations at the whole organizational level is a way that you plan and think strategically, and it supports progress and creates stability. So thinking about all that, I want to thank you. And Colber, you gonna take us out here with an evaluation?
Thank you all for attending. These are the conversation that, again, we can continue to have, and also I always feel like we've run out of time. My colleague on here, Miss Michelle, she had a great story. I wanted her to share, but just ran out of time of what an issue that she had to deal with. But I see you, Michelle. Get you next time. So we're here for you all. So Prospering Partners, international consulting firm, we're here to help you all work better together. And so I've added our contact information, and also there's an evaluation link. So please feel free, please take the evaluation. We want to know how we can get better, and also how we can help you all. And also there's our contact information. We provide professional development training and also facilitate a strategic process for you all to reach your strategic goals. So thank you for joining, and want to give you all the last couple minutes to take the evaluation. Thank you for coming.
So
Go ahead.
Thank you all. Can I get a thumbs up for that from everybody, because that was really, really good, really beneficial. I think it's you pointed out some things that we can all take with us today, and it doesn't matter if it's in the workplace, at church, or your friends, or so very, very good. I do think we'll need to revisit this though in the near future. So I want to thank you all for that. Again, we were putting the what's the survey? What, for the life of me, the words have just left my brain.
It's evaluation.
Evaluation. Thank you so much.
Yes,
My mind was on shoes and where I was going for lunch. Sorry. So evaluation, please take the time to fill that out. Someone was asking about the slide deck, and it is in the chat, so you can have that. And then once we clean up the recording, we will send it to all that was on today, and we'll also send it out to our memberships. And our membership, because we don't do that often, but stellar presentation, and I think so beneficial for so many. To my friend Vandy, thank you for being on today. And to my new friend Colber, thank you for joining us. And if we want to give them a couple more, like another minute to fill it out, would that be good?
That's great. I can play some tunes.
Play some tunes.
better shop around. Don't let your phone get you. I love you, but I wanna be with you. Before you let her hold you tight. Yeah, make sure she's alright. Before you let her take your hands off. Just stay in my side.
Would you mind to put the PowerPoint again at the end?
Of course.
Oh, yes, wait a minute, Mr. Postman. Hey, Mr. Postman. Oh, yeah.
If you're not getting the PowerPoint through the chat box, you can private message me your email and I'll send it to you that way as well.
There must be some word today, yeah. Some boyfriend so far away. Please, Mr. Postman, look and see. Is there a letter for me? I'm standing here waiting, Mr. Postman. So patiently. For just a card, for just a letter. Saying he's returning home to me. This is the postman. Oh, yeah, yeah. He's the postman. Oh, yeah. So many days you passed me by. You saw the tears standing in my eyes. You wouldn't stop to make me feel better. Not leaving me a card or a letter. Please tell the postman, look and see. Is there a letter? Oh, yeah. In your bag for me. You know it's been so long. Yes, and I heard from the boyfriend of mine. You better wait a minute, wait a minute. Oh, you better wait a minute, wait a minute, please, Mr. Postman. Wait a minute, Mr. Postman. Please check and see just one more time for me. You better wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Please, Mr. Postman. Deliver the letter, the sooner the better. Wait a minute, wait a minute. Wait a minute, please, Mr. Postman. Wait a minute, wait a minute.
You broke my heart because I couldn't dance. You didn't even want me around. And now I'm back to let you know I can really shake them down. Watch me now.
The CD skipped.